Good evening, fellow Singaporeans. Thank you for being here with us this evening. I'm here today in my personal capacity. I was asked to share with you some of my personal views on our nation, her future, and the upcoming presidential elections. Although I speak frequently at financial and legal conferences, this is the first time I'm speaking at a political rally. So please go easy on me. Earlier this year, I spoke at a conference on the subject of corporate governance. Corporate governance is about the law, process, and practice of making sure CEOs and management are working in the best interests of shareholders and not placing themselves above shareholders. You see, in the world of finance and business, people understand that it's important to have talented leaders. But it's also important to make sure that we help management to stay true to their core values and faithful to their shareholders. In business, it's just wise to have insurance against the frailties of human nature. Now, many of you will remember great companies run by very smart people, great companies with AAA ratings. Their CEOs were paid salaries in the millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. These companies were run by the smartest people with the best degrees, PhDs from the best universities in the world, Nobel laureates even, like AIG, like Lehman Brothers, like Long-Term Capital Management, and many others. But like Warren Buffett said, it's only when the tide goes out that you learn who has been swimming without their clothes. In 2007, many of you will know, we had the global financial crisis. And what happened to those AAA rated companies when the tide went out? Shareholders found out that these companies had made very bad investments and wasted their shareholders' capital on toxic assets. But it was too late. Remember, these companies had AAA ratings, very highly paid CEOs, and employed some of the smartest people in the world. None of this protected them from collapse. Now, they were suddenly bankrupt. How did this happen? On Wall Street, it was always business as usual until the sudden and unexpected collapse of these mighty companies. Many articles and papers and thousands of hours of discussions, interviews, and analysis have gone into trying to explain what went wrong. But in a nutshell, these mighty institutions failed because no one stepped back, took a fresh and critical look at the risks they were assuming, and pointed out to them what they were doing wrong. No one outside the banks really knew how much exposure they had to risky investments. On an institutional scale, they were guilty of groupthink. No one dared to point out that the emperor had no clothes, and this proved to be fatal. Luckily for us, all that was lost was some banks and some money. See all this, however, it did make me wonder, and it made me very worried. Could this kind of groupthink risk or concentration risk, action that was based on unchallenged, one-sided thinking, happen on a national scale? Well, we didn't have to wait very long to see. Today, we read in the news that the United States is crippled by its debts. It is in serious financial trouble and has just lost its AAA rating. You say. But the US is exactly the kind of democracy that we don't want to become. It's a mess. But let's think carefully about this. For about 100 years, the US has been the richest and most powerful country on this planet. Its system of checks and balances worked well for nearly 250 years and made it what it was. How did it suddenly get into trouble in the last 10 years? Let's take a closer look. In the year 2000, the dot-com bubble burst in the US, leading to some of the greatest stock market devaluation and wealth destruction in history. This was followed by the September 11 terrorist attacks. All of this created a tremendous environment of fear and anxiety amongst the American population. They had never been attacked on their soil before. In their fear, what did the American people do? They basically gave unrestrained and unchecked power to the Bush administration. And what did the Bush administration do with all that unchecked power? It embarked on a unilateral policy of waging expensive and unsustainable wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In the process, to finance those wars, it borrowed heavily and printed a lot of money. Some say the cost of the Iraq and Afghan wars today is over $1.2 trillion. That's a number 1 followed by 12 zeros. The current US federal deficit is about also $1.4 trillion. So it's not hard to see where the federal deficit came from. So after 250 prosperous years of checks and balances, the US is brought to its knees by 8 short years of unchecked and concentrated power. Now, our Singapore government is not like the Bush administration. I don't believe they will do anything risky, such as start pointless wars or lose your money on bad investments. But just in case, as insurance, to make sure we don't get into trouble, we have the elected president. The elected president is like the goalkeeper, the jaga, the swimming pool lifeguard, the head prefect. You get the picture. He is the last defense between our national goal net and a disastrous own goal. It is therefore a very important job. So who should do this job? I won't give you the answer directly. I just want you to think about this. This question makes me think back to my secondary school days. When there was a change of period, or the teacher had to leave us alone, she didn't say, Atul, look after Akao, make sure he is good. Akao, you look after Atul as well, okay? Of course not, because that would have been havoc. Atul and Akao cannot monitor each other. Instead, the teacher would ask the class monitor to look after us. Usually, he was someone very serious. But even then, the class monitor was our friend, so he couldn't be too strict with us. The best caretakers, of course, were the prefects from the other classes. They were completely independent from our class. They stuck to the rules, and they made sure everyone behaved, or else, without exception. From this, I learned one thing. Our president must be independent. Better still, if he's not from the same class. You know, I came here tonight with mixed feelings. I love this country and my countrymen. I grew up here and I owe this country a lot. My grandparents came here from Ningbo and Xiamen. My family, extended family, and my childhood friends from school are here. I did my NS. By the way, on the subject of NS deferment, it's a subject that's very close to my heart. When I was 16 years old, I applied for a 6-month deferment from NS so I could go on a scholarship paid for in full by the Canadian government to do my JC. After a lot of begging and groveling, MINDEF finally allowed me to go, provided my parents posted a bond of $100,000. This was in the late 1980s. At that time, that was 3 times their combined annual salary. They had to borrow money just to post it. So I know it is not easy for any ordinary people to get even a short deferment from NS. You know, when I was growing up, I had affordable bilingual education, cheap housing, a safe environment, things that were affordable, and these were affordable and accessible. As a child, it was not expensive to see a government doctor if I was sick, and I did not have to wait very long. Fast forward to today. On the one hand, we still have a generally well-run administration. We have clean water, beautiful parks, and other things. Many of my friends and business associates from other countries admire Singapore for its administration. On the other hand, much in our society has changed from the time I was growing up, often not for the better. Housing, education, and healthcare are no longer cheap and affordable. People seem less contented, less happy, and many seem to have been left behind. Friends, are we still on the right track? I think I'm not alone in asking this question. Our society is facing huge pressures that, if not addressed, will result in structural cracks. In the times of crisis that are coming, these could turn into open fractures. Now, more than ever, we need leadership, not followership. In a fast-changing world, we cannot drift along just following the same old rigid system. Now more than ever, our nation needs leaders with vision and foresight, like the old guy. Now I want to talk about Mr. Tan Jee Say. He is what tonight's rally is about. You know, I heard there's a rumor going around asking why Mr. Tan Jee Say changed jobs, 5 jobs in 30 years, something like that. Wow, that's shocking. He's so boring, so stable. In the financial sector where Jee Say was working, I see people changing jobs every 1 or 2 or 3 years. So maybe Tan Jee Say is too boring and stable to be president. I don't know. You can decide for yourself. Personally, I like his independent-mindedness. Fellow Singaporeans, you work hard for your money. In Singapore, there is no such thing as a free lunch. In this year's UBS Prices and Earnings Survey, Singapore ranks 42 in terms of salary levels, below Sao Paulo, Johannesburg, and Ljubljana, which is in Slovenia. In terms of purchasing power, we are number 47, below Tokyo, Taipei, Seoul, and Hong Kong. Yet we are number 10, the 10th most expensive city to live in, more expensive than Paris, New York, and London. Business as usual in Singapore is not working anymore. It is time to bring in a fresh set of eyes and a new perspective. Someone who is independent and who is not afraid to speak out. Tan Jee Say strikes me as someone who is independent-minded and analytical. He is smart. He is good with finance, economics, and numbers, and has experience in those fields. He can offer fresh ideas and new perspectives that an establishment insider may be unable or unwilling to. Sometimes we all need a push to be challenged. It makes us try harder, work harder. It's not a bad thing for the president to push the government to try harder sometimes. We're not getting the best value for our money if we let our president only shake hands and cut ribbons at official ceremonies. From talking with Jee Say, I believe he's doing this not for the money, but from the heart, because he believes this is what Singapore needs. Someone who has the independent confidence to say that the emperor has no clothes if the time ever comes for that. This is the best reason, and some say the only reason, for going to public service. Vote for Tan Jee Say. Thank you.